The hydrophone is a microphone that detects sound waves underwater. Canadian inventor Reginald Fessenden created the device to try and limit disasters like the Titanic, but his idea ended up primarily being used in World War I to notify Allied users of oncoming enemy ships. About 3,000 Allied submarine ships were equipped with hydrophones, and the first submarine detected by hydrophone and destroyed by a surface ship was a German submarine in English territory. The Germans quickly added hydrophones to their submarines to counteract the use of Allied technology against them, and as a result, the first submarine detected by hydrophone and destroyed by a submarine was a British submarine in German territory. Then, British submarines were equipped with hydrophones.
This extremely successful and sneaky device aided both the Allied and Central Powers in World War I. Until creation of sonar, hydrophones were the one and only method for submarines to detect targets while submerged.
The first pilotless drone was invented by the U.S. Navy, more specifically Orville Wright and Charles F. Kettering. First invented in 1916, the name they came up with for their first pilotless drone was the Kettering bugs. The purpose of these drones was to bomb people and scout out their enemy positions. The Kettering bug did improve some lives during the war because these drones helped the troops find their enemies faster and prevent enemies from attacking them first. However, the negative impacts were that sometimes the drones failed. Dayton Wright Airplane Company built fewer than 50 bugs before the war ended.
Depth charges are a weapon that is essentially a can filled with explosives and a fuse that explodes at a preset depth based on the pressure of the ocean water surrounding such instrument. This underwater explosive was created by the British to sink German submarines, the inventor being a Portsmouth-based Royal Navy man, Herbert Taylor. Other countries began to develop and enhance their own version of British depth charges. The final US depth charge could detonate at up to 300 feet in depth and carried 300 pounds of explosives, a significantly lethal weapon that could be used to the United States' advantage.
Poison gas. It was first used by the French in the form of tear gas grenades in August of 1914. The Germans saw this new technology and thought it could benefit them in the war, so they experimented with it heavily from October 1914 to March of 1915. They used chemical irritants and tear gas against the French as they worked to perfect their new weapon. On April 22, 1915, the Germans released chlorine gas on the French at the Second Battle of Ypres. This gas attacked the respiratory system of the French soldiers and induced violent choking. Soldiers, having never been exposed to this before, fled and lost land on the Western Front. After this first successful attack, the Central Powers made more advancements with phosgene and mustard gas. Both were devastating, with phosgene killing its victims slowly over the course of days, and mustard gas causing extremely painful blisters to form in and outside of the body. With gas attacks becoming increasingly common, protection had to be developed. Early protection only consisted of cotton pads dipped in bicarbonate, but by the end of World War I, nearly all soldiers had respirators that could easily filter out all of the harsh chemicals.
Though the original airplane was created on December 17, 1903 by Wilbur and Orville Wright, the fighter plane was created mid-World War I as machine guns were added atop planes to create a highly lethal weapon. However, planes were first used to spy on and determine enemies' movements and position. At the First Battle of the Marne, Allied reconnaissance planes spotted a gap in the German lines. The Allies attacked the gap and were able to split up German armies and force them to retreat. Pilots found that the best way to shoot down enemy planes was with a mounted machine gun. And not only were these fighter planes considered weapons, but the mounted gun was a means of protecting the not-so-structurally sound airplane, merely made of canvas, wood, and wire. Pilots often fought enemy pilots in the air, and these fights were called dogfights. The best fighter pilots were nicknamed aces.
Warships had a major impact on both world wars. The first battleships in World War I were the British dreadnoughts, a type of ship Britain had been manufacturing since the 1500s. These ships were one of the main reasons that the British Empire could exert its power over such long distances. Going into World War I, Britain had a massive fleet of 35 warships, plus 6 from the US. Although these warships were very strong, they still had some major flaws. One being that there was little to no accuracy with the large guns. The old way of aiming was shooting near the target and watching the splash of the shell, but this method was very ineffective. The warships would use smaller guns because they fired and reloaded much faster, but they did not do enough damage to be effective. There were many advancements in battleships by the start of World War II. One was the development of the aircraft carriers. Some other new technologies included the battleship and cruiser, which were heavily armored and could do a lot of damage to an enemy fleet. Although all of these ships were extremely powerful, the strength of torpedoes was too much for them to be very effective.
Tracer bullets were invented by the British in 1915 after the war started in 1914. Tracer bullets are bullets that are built with a firework-like charge in their base, meaning the bullets have a path of smoke or fire. Tracer bullets were used in the dark to see paths in which the bullet was shot and to know if you hit your enemy. Thousands more people were killed with tracer bullets because they were more effective and were easy to use in the night. The first attempt with the tracer bullet was in 1915. The second attempt, the tracer bullet, was developed in 1916 and emitted a regular bright green-white trail, which was successful.
The Second War was over. Germany had already surrendered, but there was one country that refused to surrender: Japan. US had to create something so they could surrender. Albert Einstein came up with the idea of a new kind of bomb that helped US scientists to create a project named the Manhattan Project. The scientist leader was Robert, better known as the father of the atomic bomb. It cost $2 billion and 200,000 people working on it. It was a huge success. On August 6, 1945, the first one was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. It was a catastrophe, leaving 80,000 killed. 3 days after they released the second bomb on Nagasaki, Japan, it left 70,000 people dead. The atomic bomb was 10 feet long and the weight was 10,000 pounds. It was the largest leap in technology during World War II.
Tanks are one of the most important technological advancements throughout the world wars. The first tanks were created to break the stalemate in trench warfare on the Western Front in World War I. The first time tanks were mainly used in combat was on September 15, 1916 against the Central Powers at the Battle of the Somme. The best tank of World War I by far was the Renault FT-17. Developed by the French, it was lighter and had less protection than most British tanks, making it very maneuverable during combat. It also had a turret mounted on the top, which was more effective than having them on the sides like the British. Going into World War II, many improvements to the vehicles were made. Some major advancements included separate main tank armament and machine gun platform, which enabled firing while moving, and heavier armor and weapons allowing tanks to deal and take more damage. This new technology had a major effect on the war. Throughout the war, Germany had made much more advanced tanks from the US and Great Britain. However, towards the end of the war, sheer numbers won out over fewer well-designed tanks. Germany simply could not keep up with the quantity of the US and Russian tanks being produced. Tanks are one of the main aspects that changed both world wars.
The machine gun became an important role on the battlefield during the First War. The inventor was Hiram Maxim. He was American. Machine guns of all armies used to vary. The weight was between 30 kilograms or 60 kilograms, without counting the mountings or supplies. It required a crew of 4 to 6 operations. It fired between 400 600 small caliber per minute. The machine gun was first offered to the British Army. In fact, they couldn't see the real use of the oil-cooled machine gun. They didn't create their machine guns until October 1915. The Germans did recognize the weapon's potential, so they created separate machine gun companies to support infantry battalions. Germany killed 60,000 British soldiers in one day thanks to the gun. In 1918, the one-man portable machine gun came out.